The authorities confiscated my house in $1 million because I refused to listen to my son-in-law, an arrogant Wall Street fraudster. When they changed the locks and said, "Go live in a shelter, Grandpa," I called 911. What happened next made them pale with horror. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The doorbell chimed at precisely 2 o'clock on July 1st, just as Lauren had promised. I set down my ceramic coffee mug, a gift from my late wife Helen 40 years prior, and made my way to the front door. My Vietnam injury had been troubling me more in recent weeks, that old shrapnel wound reminding me of battles fought long ago in jungles half a world away. Through the peephole, I observed my daughter's carefully styled auburn hair and her husband Kenneth's immaculate charcoal suit gleaming in the afternoon Cleveland sunshine. "Dad," Lauren's voice carried that particular tone I had come to recognize over the years, a manufactured warmth that felt rehearsed rather than genuine. She embraced me with practiced affection, her expensive French perfume overwhelming the familiar scent of my aftershave, a simple drugstore brand I had used for decades. Kenneth stepped forward with his polished Wall Street demeanor, extending a manicured hand that spoke of expensive manicures and a life lived far from honest labor. "Walter, always a pleasure to see you again." I gripped his hand with the firmness that 50 years of construction work had embedded in my bones. At 75, I might move more slowly than in my younger days, but the strength built through decades of honest work remained. Kenneth tried to assert dominance through his handshake, a transparent power play that revealed more about his insecurities than his strength. "Please come in," I said, stepping aside with the hospitality Helen had taught me never to abandon, regardless of circumstances. I prepared iced tea in the kitchen. They settled into my living room with an air of familiarity that struck me as presumptuous. Kenneth's eyes conducted a methodical inventory of my modest furnishings, the photographs of Helen displayed on the mantelpiece, and the shadow box containing my military decorations from service in Southeast Asia. His gaze lingered on each item with the calculating assessment of an appraiser rather than the respectful interest of family. "Dad, the house looks—" Lauren paused, searching for words that would not offend while conveying her underlying message. "It looks exactly the same as always. Why would I change what your mother and I built together?" I replied, settling into my favorite armchair, the one Helen had insisted we purchase during our first year of marriage. "Everything here serves its purpose and holds our memories." Kenneth leaned forward, positioning his elbows on his knees in a posture I recognized from boardroom negotiations I had witnessed during my years managing construction crews. His body language spoke of someone preparing to deliver carefully calculated news disguised as concern. "Actually, Walter, that's precisely why we've come to visit today. Lauren and I have been giving considerable thought to your future, about what would truly be in your best interests as you enter this new phase of life." Something in his measured tone caused me to set my glass down with deliberate care. I had heard similar inflections in corporate meetings and contract negotiations, the voice of someone about to deliver unwelcome news wrapped in the language of concern and expertise. "My future seems quite satisfactory to me," I responded with the even tone that had served me well in military service and business dealings. Lauren exchanged a meaningful glance with her husband before returning her attention to me with those blue eyes that reminded me so powerfully of her mother. "Dad, we're genuinely worried about you living here alone. You're not getting any younger, and this large house represents such an enormous responsibility." "I have managed quite effectively thus far," I replied, noting the careful way they had coordinated this conversation, like actors who had rehearsed their lines. "But for how much longer?" Kenneth interjected, his voice taking on a sharper edge that revealed his impatience beneath the veneer of concern. "What happens when you can no longer navigate those stairs safely? What happens when you experience a medical emergency and no one is present to provide assistance?" The afternoon light streaming through my windows suddenly felt harsh and unforgiving. I studied Kenneth's face, noting the way his jaw tightened when he spoke of my limitations, as if my advancing age represented a personal inconvenience to him rather than the natural progression of a life well lived. I appreciate your concern, I said slowly, weighing each word with the care that comes from decades of experience in difficult conversations. However, I am not prepared to consider institutional care at this time. Who mentioned anything about institutional care? Lauren's laugh carried a brittle quality that reminded me of glass under stress. We're discussing something far superior to that option. Kenneth retrieved a leather portfolio from his briefcase, the kind that announced expensive legal consultation or high-end financial services. We've located an exceptional assisted living community in Florida. Beautiful weather year-round, engaging activities, people of your generation who share similar interests and experiences. And what becomes of my house? I asked, though I suspected I already understood the trajectory of this conversation. Kenneth's smile widened with what he undoubtedly considered charm, but struck me as predatory. That's where our professional expertise becomes invaluable. I maintain connections in real estate markets, and Lauren and I could handle the entire sale process for you. We would remove that burden completely from your shoulders. The room fell silent except for the steady ticking of Helen's grandfather clock, a wedding gift from her parents that had marked time in our home for half a century. I looked at my daughter, searching her face for some trace of the child who had once helped me plant roses in the garden, who had wept when she accidentally stepped on insects because she could not bear to cause harm to any living creature. And my savings? I asked quietly, though I feared I already knew the answer. Your money would be completely secure, Kenneth assured me, his fingers drumming against the portfolio in a rhythm that betrayed his eagerness. In fact, I could invest it for you, potentially double your assets within 12 months. I have access to investment opportunities that most people never encounter. There it was, delivered with the confidence of a man who believed his own lies. The true purpose of this visit crystallized before me, not concern for my well-being or love for a family patriarch, but the cold calculation of financial opportunity. I felt something constrict in my chest, a combination of heartbreak and disappointment that I had not experienced since the day we buried Helen. Lauren reached across the space between us and took my hand in hers. Dad, we simply want what's best for you. We want you to be comfortable and secure in your final years. I squeezed her hand gently, feeling the softness of her skin, the expensive wedding ring Kenneth had purchased for her, the life she had constructed so far from the values Helen and I had attempted to instill. I need some time to consider this proposal, I said. Kenneth's jaw tightened with barely concealed frustration. Of course, take whatever time you need, Walter. However, I would caution against excessive deliberation. Opportunities of this caliber don't remain available indefinitely. After they departed, I remained seated in my living room as shadows lengthened across the hardwood floors Helen and I had refinished ourselves during our 3rd year of marriage. The grandfather clock continued its steady rhythm, marking time that suddenly felt far more precious than it had that morning. The following morning brought steady rain, the kind that made my old injuries ache with memories of monsoons in Vietnam. I had slept poorly, replaying the previous day's conversation repeatedly in my mind, analyzing each word and gesture like intelligence reports from a reconnaissance mission. By the time Lauren called at 9:30, I was dressed and seated at my kitchen table with the morning newspaper, though I had absorbed little of its contents. Dad, I hope I'm not calling too early. I know you're usually up at the sunrise. I've been awake since 5, sweetheart. You know how military habits persist. Her laugh sounded forced, lacking the genuine warmth I remembered from her childhood. Right, of course. Listen, Kenneth and I were discussing your situation last night, and we really believe this Florida opportunity could be perfect for you. I spent time researching online, and the facility features a swimming pool, an extensive library, even a workshop where you could pursue projects like you used to enjoy. I gazed out my kitchen window at Mrs. Chen's garden, where she was tending her vegetables despite the rain. She was 82 and maintained her independence, driving herself to appointments and managing her household with the dignity that comes from a lifetime of self-reliance. Lauren, may I ask you something? Of course, Dad. When your mother was facing her illness, what did she tell you about caring for family? There was a pause that stretched longer than comfortable conversation typically allows. She said that family always comes first, that we take care of each other. That's correct. She said we care for each other, not take advantage of each other. I don't understand what you're implying, she said, but I could hear in her voice that she understood perfectly. Your mother left me this house, Lauren. She left me my independence and my dignity, and she raised you to understand values that seem to have been forgotten in this conversation. Dad, you're being overly dramatic. We're trying to help you. No, you're trying to help yourselves to what I've spent 50 years building. The line went quiet except for the sound of her breathing, and when she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more reminiscent of the daughter I remembered. Kenneth says the investment opportunity is guaranteed. He says we could all benefit significantly. And what do you say, Lauren? What does my daughter say, not Kenneth's wife? I don't know anymore, Dad. Things have become complicated. Money is tight, and Kenneth has these opportunities that could solve our problems. Financial difficulty is not new, sweetheart. What's new is believing you can solve it by betraying your father. We're not betraying anyone. We're just trying to. You're trying to what? Please complete that thought. She began crying then, soft sobs that transported me back to when she was 7 years old and had broken Helen's favorite vase, the same helpless sound, the same shame that came from knowing she had done wrong. I am sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. But Kenneth says if we don't find a way to generate more income, we might lose our house. The mortgage payments are crushing us, and his position at the firm has become uncertain. Now, we were approaching honesty. So you decided to solve your financial problems with my life savings. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, Lauren, and you know it. I heard Kenneth's voice in the background, sharp and insistent, though I could not distinguish his words. Lauren's crying stopped abruptly, as if someone had turned off a switch. Dad, I have to go now. But please, just consider what we've discussed. Think about your future and what would truly be best. I'm thinking about it very carefully, sweetheart. More carefully than you might imagine. After she ended the call, I sat in the silence of my kitchen, listening to rain against the windows while Helen's photograph on the refrigerator seemed to watch me with the same disappointment I felt settling in my chest like a physical weight. I retrieved my phone and dialed a number I had memorized years earlier, but never expected to use for personal reasons. Bennett Investigations, Thomas speaking. Thomas, this is Walter Harrison. We met at the Veterans of Foreign Wars last year during the Memorial Day ceremony. Walter, of course. How are you managing? I need your professional assistance with a family matter. Something involving potential fraud. Family cases are always the most difficult. Walter, are you certain you want to proceed with this? I looked around my kitchen at the home Helen and I had built together, at the life I had constructed through 5 decades of honest work and careful planning. I'm certain, Thomas. I believe my daughter and her husband are planning to defraud me, and I need to understand exactly what they're planning before they execute their scheme. I'll be there this afternoon. Thank you, Thomas. Don't thank me yet, Walter. In cases like this, you might not appreciate what I discover. As I hung up the phone, I realized I already suspected what he would find. The question was not whether Lauren and Kenneth were planning to cheat me. The question was how far they were willing to go to accomplish it. Thomas Bennett arrived at 3 o'clock precisely, carrying a worn leather briefcase and bearing the careful demeanor of a man who had spent 20 years as a Cleveland police detective. Now in his 50s with gray threading through his dark hair, he possessed the watchful eyes of someone who had learned to trust nobody and verify everything. Coffee, I offered as he settled into my living room chair. Black, if you have it. I poured 2 cups and sat across from him, noting how he had positioned himself to observe both the front entrance and the hallway leading to the rear of the house. Old professional habits, I supposed. Tell me what's happening, Walter. I recounted yesterday's visit in detail, Lauren's phone call this morning, and the growing certainty in my mind that something was fundamentally wrong with their proposal. Thomas listened without interruption, occasionally making notes in a small notebook with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to gathering information. This Florida facility, he said when I finished, did they provide a specific name? Sunset Gardens, located in Tampa, according to Kenneth. Thomas made another note. And the investment opportunity? Any specific details about his connections or methodology? Only that he could double my money within a year through his professional network. Thomas's expression remained neutral, but I noticed a slight tightening around his eyes. Walter, I'm going to speak frankly with you. What you're describing sounds like a classic confidence scheme. The assisted living story removes you from the equation. The power of attorney gives them control of your assets. And the investment promise makes the money disappear through seemingly legitimate channels. But Lauren is my daughter. She wouldn't participate in something criminal. She might not fully comprehend she's part of a fraud. Walter, some of these individuals are skilled at convincing their spouses they're legitimate businessmen conducting legal transactions. Thomas opened his briefcase and removed a contract. I'm going to need you to sign this agreement, and I'll require a retainer of $500 to begin. I bill at $50 per hour plus documented expenses. I signed without hesitation and wrote him a check from my account. How long will this investigation require? Give me 1 week. I'll conduct background checks on Kenneth, verify his employment status, investigate this Florida facility. I'll also arrange discreet surveillance to observe their actual behavior when they believe no one is watching. Surveillance. Sometimes people reveal their true intentions when they think they're unobserved. That evening, I called Lauren back. My hands trembled slightly as I dialed, not from age, but from the weight of what I was initiating. Dad, I was hoping you would call back. I've made a decision, Lauren. You have. Her voice brightened immediately, revealing her relief. I want to examine all the paperwork, every document, the Florida facility information, the investment details, everything you and Kenneth have prepared. Of course, absolutely. Kenneth will be delighted. He's already begun preparing the necessary documents for your signature. Documents for my signature, not information for my review. The distinction was not lost on me. When can you bring them? How about this Saturday afternoon? Kenneth wants to review everything carefully with you. Ensure you understand all the benefits completely. Saturday sounds appropriate. Oh, Dad, this is wonderful news. You're going to love Florida and the financial returns. Kenneth says with his connections, we could see gains of 200%, possibly more. 200%. The number lingered in the air like smoke from a questionable fire. In my 40 years of construction work and business management, I had never encountered a legitimate investment promising anything approaching such returns. Lauren, may I ask you something? Anything, Dad. Do you remember what your mother used to say about opportunities that seemed too good to be true? There was a pause that felt pregnant with memory. She said they usually are too good to be true. That's correct, sweetheart. She was a wise woman. Your mother. Dad, are you having second thoughts? Because Kenneth says the window for this opportunity won't remain open indefinitely. I'm not having second thoughts, Lauren. I'm simply remembering your mother's wisdom. After we concluded our conversation, I walked through my house methodically, really observing it for the first time in months. The hardwood floors Helen and I had refinished ourselves during our early years together. The kitchen where she had taught Lauren to bake cookies every Christmas. The living room where we had celebrated holidays and birthdays and quiet Sunday afternoons reading the newspaper together. They wanted to remove all of this from my life, sell it to strangers, and disappear my life savings into some scheme that would benefit everyone except the man who had spent 50 years earning it through honest labor. However, they had made one critical miscalculation. They had assumed that because I was elderly, I was helpless. They had forgotten that I had survived combat in Vietnam, built a successful business, and raised a family based on principles that did not include stealing from people who loved you. As I turned off the lights and made my way upstairs to bed, I found myself anticipating Saturday afternoon with something approaching eagerness. By then, Thomas would have begun his investigation, and I would possess a much clearer understanding of exactly whom I was dealing with. The grandfather clock chimed 11 times as I reached the top of the stairs, its steady rhythm a reminder that time was indeed precious, and that some people had already wasted far too much of mine. Thomas called me Thursday morning while I was nursing my second cup of coffee and watching the sunrise illuminate my kitchen walls with golden light. 3 days of investigation had yielded more information than either of us had anticipated. Walter, you need to prepare yourself for what I'm about to tell you. I'm ready, Thomas. What did you discover? Sunset Gardens doesn't exist. The Tampa address they provided leads to a vacant lot that has been empty for 2 years. My coffee suddenly tasted bitter in my mouth, and Kenneth's investment opportunity appears to be a classic Ponzi scheme. I found 3 other families in New York who lost everything to identical presentations. Same promises, same documentation, same disappearing act afterward. The pieces clicked together in my mind with the precision of ammunition sliding into a rifle chamber. How long has this been operating? At least 18 months, possibly longer. Walter, your daughter may not understand the full extent of what her husband has been doing, but then again, she might know exactly what she's participating in. I had a decision to make. What's our next step? I'm going to record everything on Saturday. I have equipment that will capture conversations from 3 rooms away. But Walter, you need to be careful. If they suspect you're aware of their scheme, let me worry about that, Thomas. These 2 have forgotten who they're dealing with. Friday passed with the sluggish pace of anticipation. I cleaned my house twice, organized my financial papers 3 times, and visited Helen's grave as I did every Friday, telling her about our daughter's betrayal while placing fresh roses by her headstone. Saturday afternoon arrived with punctual inevitability. Lauren's car entered my driveway at exactly 2 o'clock, Kenneth's confident stride already visible through the passenger window. I watched them gather their briefcase and manila folders, weapons disguised as legitimate paperwork. Thomas's surveillance van was positioned 3 houses down, camouflaged as a cable repair vehicle. Through my kitchen window, I could observe him adjusting his recording equipment inside. The doorbell rang with finality. Dad, Lauren's smile was brighter than usual, almost manic with anticipated success. Are you ready to begin your new life? Kenneth swept past her, carrying his briefcase like a conquering general's banner. Walter, today's the day we secure your financial future. They spread their documents across my dining room table with the efficiency of funeral directors arranging burial preparations. Power of attorney forms, property transfer deeds, investment contracts promising returns that would make lottery winners envious of my good fortune. See here, Kenneth pointed with his gold pen. This document grants Lauren and me the authority to manage your assets while you're settling into your new residence in Florida. And this, Lauren added, her voice trembling slightly with nervous energy, transfers the house deed temporarily, just until we can achieve the optimal sale price. I picked up the power of attorney document, noting that my signature line was already completed in handwriting that bore no resemblance to my own. The forgery was expertly executed, almost perfect in its deception. You've both invested considerable effort in this preparation, I observed. Kenneth's chest expanded with professional pride. I have connections, Walter. People who can facilitate transactions quickly and discreetly. I'm certain you do. I set the document down with deliberate care. Lauren, sweetheart, could you bring me a glass of water? This represents a great deal to process. She jumped up eagerly, desperate to be helpful, to wash away whatever guilt was gnawing at her conscience with acts of service. The moment she left for the kitchen, Kenneth leaned forward like a predator sensing weakness. Between you and me, Walter, the sooner we complete this process, the better. Lauren has been worried sick about you living here alone. This solution benefits everyone involved. His smile sharpened with anticipated victory. Especially me. I'm going to ensure your money works harder than it ever has before. Lauren returned with my water, her hands shaking slightly as she placed it on the table. Dad, are you feeling well? You look pale. Just contemplating how quickly everything is changing. I took a sip of water, buying time while they settled into their confidence like comfortable clothes. Kenneth, could you explain exactly how this investment process works? For the next 20 minutes, he painted an elaborate picture of guaranteed returns, offshore accounts, and connections that would multiply my modest savings like biblical fishes and loaves. Lauren nodded along enthusiastically, her relief growing with each lie he told. Finally, Kenneth slid his pen across the table toward me with theatrical flourish. All we need is your signature, Walter. Right here, here, and here. I picked up the pen, feeling its weight, knowing that Thomas's recording equipment was capturing every word of this performance. The moment of truth had arrived, and Kenneth was about to learn what happened when someone attempted to outsmart a man who had survived both war and peace. You know, Kenneth, I think I need to make a telephone call first. His confident smile flickered like a candle in wind. A telephone call to whom? I pulled out my phone and dialed 3 simple numbers that would change everything. 911. What's your emergency? Kenneth's face turned white as fresh snow. Lauren dropped her water glass, sending crystal shards across my hardwood floor like fallen stars. Yes, hello. I need to report a crime in progress. My name is Walter Harrison, and I'm at 847 Maple Street in Parma. My daughter and son-in-law are attempting to steal my house and life savings through forged documents. The dispatcher's voice carried professional concern through my phone speaker. Sir, are you in immediate physical danger? Not physical danger, but they're attempting to force me to sign fraudulent papers at this very moment. Kenneth lunged for my phone, but 40 years of construction work had maintained my strength beyond my apparent age. I held it away from him easily. Sir, officers are en route. Please remain on the line. Lauren was hyperventilating now, her carefully applied makeup running in dark streams down her cheeks like rain on a painted portrait. Dad, what are you doing? We're family. Family doesn't steal from family, sweetheart. Kenneth had recovered from his initial shock and was frantically gathering the incriminating documents. This is insane, Walter. You've lost your mind. Lauren, we're leaving immediately. Actually, you're not going anywhere. I walked to my front door and opened it wide, allowing the afternoon breeze to carry the sound of approaching sirens into my house like music. Kenneth froze like prey caught in searchlights, his hands full of evidence. You can't prove anything, he said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Can't I? I pulled out my phone again and accessed a recording I had made earlier in the week. Thomas's equipment isn't the only technology that records conversations. Kenneth. The first police car entered my driveway just as Kenneth's recorded voice began playing from my phone speakers. Lauren, we'll simply sign his name ourselves. The old man won't notice anything amiss, and by the time he does, it will be far too late. Emily's sobs cut through the air like broken glass. Kenneth, you told me we were just helping him manage his finances better. 2 officers approached my front door with the measured steps of professionals who had witnessed every variety of human deception. The senior officer had gray temples and weary eyes that had seen too many family betrayals. His younger partner appeared fresh from the academy, alert and eager. Good afternoon, officers. I'm Walter Harrison. I'm the one who called about the attempted fraud. Officer Martinez, according to his name tag, surveyed the scene methodically, scattered documents, Lauren's tear-streaked face, Kenneth's panicked expression, and my unusual calm in the center of it all. Mr. Harrison, can you explain what's happening here? My daughter and her husband came here today with the intention of stealing my house and my life savings. They brought forged documents and attempted to pressure me into signing them. Kenneth stepped forward, his Wall Street training asserting itself. Officers, this is a misunderstanding. My father-in-law is elderly and confused. We're simply trying to help him manage his financial affairs responsibly. I'm 75 years old, not mentally incompetent, I replied with measured dignity. And I have evidence of their fraudulent scheme. Officer Rodriguez, the younger partner, was examining the documents Kenneth had dropped in his haste. Sir, did you sign any of these papers? Not yet, but observe the signature lines. They've been pre-filled with my name in handwriting that clearly isn't mine. Martinez took the documents and compared them to my driver's license. Even from across the room, I could see him frowning at the obvious discrepancies. Mr. Wilson, can you explain why Mr. Harrison's signature appears to be pre-written on these legal forms? Kenneth's confidence was cracking like ice under spring sunshine. That's merely a reference signature for formatting purposes. Reference for what specific purpose? Lauren suddenly found her voice. Officers, please understand. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. My father asked us to help him with his finances, and we were simply trying to assist him with the paperwork. Lauren, my voice cut through her explanation like a blade. Stop lying. You're already in sufficient trouble. Rodriguez was photographing the documents now, while Martinez continued his questioning. Mr. Harrison, you mentioned having evidence of fraud. What kind of evidence? I scrolled through my phone's recordings. I have audio recordings of my son-in-law admitting to document forgery and planning to steal my property. I also have photographs of similar schemes he's perpetrated against other families. Kenneth's face had progressed from white to gray. You cannot record private conversations without consent. Actually, in Ohio, I can record any conversation I'm party to, and since this is my house, I had every right to document what was occurring here. Martinez exchanged a meaningful look with his partner. 20 years on the force had taught him to recognize guilt when confronted with it. Mr. Wilson, I'm going to need you to place your hands behind your back. You cannot arrest me. I have connections. I'll have your badges for this harassment. But as Martinez secured the handcuffs, Kenneth's threats sounded hollow, the desperate bluster of a man whose carefully constructed plans had collapsed in spectacular fashion. Lauren collapsed in my living room chair, her designer clothes wrinkled, her perfect makeup destroyed. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so very sorry. I never intended for it to escalate this far. I looked at my daughter, this stranger who shared my blood, and felt something fracture inside my chest that would never heal completely. Some things, Lauren, cannot be undone with apologies. Officer Rodriguez was reading Kenneth's Miranda rights when Thomas's surveillance been pulled up precisely on schedule. Through my window, I watched him emerge with professional recording equipment and a satisfied expression that confirmed everything had been documented. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Kenneth's struggles against the handcuffs were pathetic, like a fish gasping on dry land. This is harassment. I demand to speak to my attorney immediately. You'll receive your phone call at the station, Martinez replied calmly. He had clearly dealt with Kenneth's type before. Wealthy individuals who believed money could purchase them immunity from consequences. Lauren sat frozen in my chair, watching her husband being arrested with the hollow expression of someone whose world had just imploded around her. When Rodriguez approached her with his notebook, she flinched as if he carried a weapon. Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions about your involvement in this scheme. I didn't know it was illegal. Kenneth told me we were helping Dad manage his money more effectively. The lie hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Even Lauren seemed to recognize how unconvincing it sounded. I retrieved my phone again and located a different recording. Officer, you might want to hear this conversation from 3 days ago. Lauren's voice filled the room, crystal clear and unmistakable. Dad, we just want what's best for you. We want you to be comfortable and secure. Then Kenneth's voice, more distant but audible. Convince him to sign everything today. Once we have power of attorney, the old man won't be able to stop us, even if he discovers what we're doing. Lauren's face crumpled like paper in fire. Dad, how could you record us? We're family. Family doesn't attempt to steal everything I've worked 50 years to build. Martinez finished with Kenneth and turned his attention to Lauren. Ma'am, based on what we've heard here today, I'm placing you under arrest as well for conspiracy to commit fraud. No, please. I have children to think about. This was all Kenneth's idea. Tell it to the judge, Rodriguez said, not unkindly, but without sympathy for her circumstances. As they led Lauren toward the second police car that had arrived, she turned back to me one final time. Dad, please don't let them take me away from my children. You should have considered your children before you attempted to rob their grandfather. The words emerged harder than I had intended, but watching her face crumble brought me no satisfaction. This was my daughter, the little girl who had once helped me build birdhouses in the garage, who had fallen asleep in my lap while I read her bedtime stories. Kenneth was loaded into the first police car, still protesting about his connections and threatening legal retaliation. Through the window, I could see him attempting to use his permitted phone call, probably hoping someone from his professional network would magically make this nightmare disappear. Lauren went more quietly, her shoulders shaking with sobs that reminded me too much of Helen's tears when she had learned her cancer diagnosis was terminal. Thomas approached my front door as the police cars pulled away, carrying what remained of my family toward whatever justice awaited them. Walter, you did the right thing. Did I? I looked at the scattered documents on my dining room table, evidence of their betrayal mixed with the wreckage of our relationship. I just destroyed my only child's life. She destroyed her own life the moment she decided to steal from you. You simply refused to be a victim. Mrs. Chun from next door was standing on her porch, watching the drama unfold with the fascination of someone whose life had been considerably more peaceful until today. What happens now? Now the legal system takes over. With the evidence we have, they'll likely plead guilty to avoid trial. Kenneth will probably receive serious prison time, especially when they discover other victims. Lauren, Thomas shrugged. First offense, cooperating witness, children involved. She might receive probation. I sat down at my dining room table, suddenly feeling every one of my 75 years. The house was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. The silence of abandonment rather than peace. You know what the worst part is, Thomas? What's that? I still love her. After everything she attempted to do to me, she's still my little girl, and I still love her. Thomas gathered up the scattered documents, evidence now in a criminal case. Love doesn't mean you have to allow people to destroy you, Walter. Sometimes loving someone means establishing boundaries they don't want to accept. Through my kitchen window, I could see Helen's rose garden blooming in the afternoon sun. Tomorrow I would visit her grave and tell her how her daughter had chosen greed over family, how the girl we had raised with such hope and pride had attempted to steal the life we had built together. But today I had survived. Today this old soldier had won his final battle, even though victory tasted more like ash than triumph. The phone rang, probably a reporter. News of wealthy people being arrested always traveled quickly in small communities like ours. I allowed it to ring, listening to the sound echo through my empty house, where family photographs still smiled down from the walls, frozen in happier times when love seemed stronger than money. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the recommended video.